Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. We are so happy you've joined us to the series where we are delighted once again to bring you insightful, thought-provoking presentations across a broad spectrum of OTT-related topics from thought leaders across our industry. One of the most compelling characteristics of OTT streaming is the vast array of available viewing options across thousands and thousands of topics, subject matter, and genres. If you want to watch a dystopian-themed sci-fi movie with subject matter pertaining to bicycle racing in Italy, that content is probably out there somewhere, available for you to watch. But how to find it? Theoretically, search can play a powerful role in matching viewers with video. But is it? In many cases, it seems that search isn't being leveraged by content owners and channels to maximize its potential. Here to help us understand search, its strengths, challenges, and how to use it to match viewers with content are two passionate and learned leaders from our industry with depth and breadth of experience in search. They're also great friends of OTT.X. Colin Dixon created nScreenMedia as a resource to the digital media industry as it transitions to multi-screen delivery. He has 20 plus years of experience working in the digital TV, over-the-top, and IPTV spaces. Previously, he was an analyst and partner with the Diffusion Group and has held senior executive positions at Microsoft Web TV, Oracle, and others. He is the author of many reports and opinion pieces and is a frequent speaker at NAB, IBC, and of course, the home ship OTT.X, as well as other industry events. Steve Harnsberger is founder and CEO of Universal Search and Discovery and president of OTT Digital Services. Stephen has 25 years working in the intersection of Silicon Valley technology and Hollywood media and runs a streaming consultancy, OTT Digital Services, Inc. Steve is the founder and CEO of Universal Search and Discovery. The company was founded in 2017 after Roku hired the team to onboard the majority of its first 100 apps into Roku Search in 2016. Today, Universal Search and Discovery creates Universal Search metadata for our feeds for companies like Univision, Weather Channel, Criterion, Shout Factory. They enable streaming app discovery within proprietary search engines on Roku, Fire, Apple, Google, Vizio TV, and other OTT platforms. With that, I'm excited to welcome Steve and Colin. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Eric.
Morning. Good morning.
I bet you were the first in line to watch that dystopian bicycle-themed sci-fi movie as well.
Yeah, it was a packed house.
Yeah, I'm sure it was.
So you're going to regale us with the virtues of Universal Search and Discovery, I hope. Yeah.
Well, both Steve and I are. Yes. We've got a lot of information to cover this morning, and I think probably a good place for us to start, Steve, is why don't we define what we actually mean by universal search? So I've got a little definition here. So I'll just quickly share my screen to show you what I think the definition is. So am I showing I think I'm showing the right thing. Very good. Yes. So I define it as the ability to search all existing TV services, including this, and it should include subscribed and unsubscribed services. So even though you haven't subscribed to a service, you should still be able to see content that's in there because, of course, you may want to subscribe. It should cover SVOD, AVOD, FAST, free ad-supported streaming TV services, TVOD, PVOD. That should all be included in this search. So really everything that you might want to possibly watch is included there. And it should restrict the services searched to the region that you are in. So you're only searching through legal searches. And the final piece, and this is a really important piece, and we'll get to this as we go through our discussion, the results should be displayed in a neutral, clearly understood way. And we'll talk about that clearly understood part in just a moment. So anyway, that's my definition, Steve. Do you have a better one?
Well, no, I think that's some of that's what search should be, because
but not what it is.
Not what it is. Search should go to fast channels. It should go to events. It should go to live events. It doesn't really. And really, I think the most important point is it's search at the platform level of the OTT ecosystem. Literally, it's the home page. So there's usually a magnifying glass or a search button on the homepage of Roku, Apple TV, and Google TV, Fire TV, Vizio TV. So it's a search for a title or a genre or a director or an actor at that level. And so at Fire TV, we're not really talking about necessarily searching at Prime TV, or we're searching at on Amazon.com. We're searching on our OTT search is what I like to call it, because as you have highlighted, it's anything but universal. So it should be called not universal search. It's a much better term.
Yeah. One of the things I've taken to call it is platform search. But even that, as we'll find out in just a moment, is a bit of a misnomer. Frankly, I can't come up with a clean definition that really tells us what is actually going on, but we'll get to that in just a second. So why don't I, part of the reason that both Steve and I have been so inspired by what's going on here is something that happened back in 2016. I was looking at this, I was discussing this issue with a group of panelists, and a couple of home truths really hit me, and I went ahead and I wrote a piece, which I'll put a link to that piece in the chat if you care to read it. And I want to just go back and look at the situation in 2016 and then compare where we are with search to today. So let's go back and let's wind the clock back a little bit here and take a look at what was going on in the world back in 2016. Cable, satellite, and telco TV penetration was 83% at that time. So that's one thing. SVOD penetration, much lower, 59%. But more important than that, most of us only had one or maybe two of those services. And probably it was Netflix and probably Prime Video were the two we had. And Prime Video was mainly because we had that because we subscribed to Amazon Prime. And there were very few homes, only about 28% of homes with more than one of those top three SVOD services, which were at the time Hulu, Amazon Prime Video, and Netflix. And there was a survey that was done by TiVo at the time, and we were very frustrated with search. 66% of us said that sometimes or always we got frustrated finding something to watch. And here really where most of us are searching just between two services, our pay TV provider and our one SVOD service that we might have had. So when I looked at this industry and I tried to figure out what it meant to us, here's what I came up with. I realized that in 2016 we were already in a world of too many apps, and we had OTT, we had TV everywhere. I'm sure not many of you are using TV everywhere anymore. That would be things like HBO Go. But we were already living in a world of multiple apps. And unfortunately, this creates a very frictionful and time-consuming process for consumers to find stuff to watch. So when I thought about that, what I thought about we really needed was we needed some sort of open source universal search standards, which would really enable apps to sort of register their service and make it very easy for us to search among all of those apps to find what we were looking for. Now, at that time, I didn't think there was any chance that this was going to happen. There were a lot of business friction realities that really stopped universal search from coming into being, because all of the platforms that were around at that time had no real incentive to work together to create this unified standard. So, okay, so let's fast forward now to what's the picture today? Well, as you can see here, it's pretty different, but in some respects, it's pretty different. Cable, satellite, and telco penetration has fallen to 56.4%. That's a big tumble. SVOD penetration has grown a lot to 80%. And the homes with more than 3 SVOD services is 58%. So big change over the last 6 years since 2016. Biggest among them is the average number of TV services used. We're now using 9 services on average, and that's, pay TV, that's SVOD services, that's new AVOD and FAST services that we're watching regularly. And those are the services among which we are trying to search. And interestingly, even though there's been, I think, some improvement in the search on platforms, which Steve will get to in just a moment, the frustration with search remains almost exactly the same. 65%, it was 66% back then, back in 2016, but 65% still say that they are sometimes or always frustrated with finding something to watch. So we still live in a world of too many apps. In fact, we have more apps than we did back then. Platform search helps, but is confusing. It's incomplete. It is biased, and we'll talk about that as well. We are no closer to an open source universal search standard, and the business friction realities between the platforms have intensified, not lessened, over the last 6 years. So really, this idea that we can even approach universal search, it's not happening. And that's having some pretty fundamental impacts on both consumers and on the service providers that are trying to provide us video services. So that's where we're at. At this point, what I think I should probably do is turn it over to Steve, because Steve's got on-the-ground experience with actually getting into search. So I'm going to hand it over to you here, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Well, we're happy to be here today, sharing some of the boots on the ground experience with getting streaming video apps into universal search, getting them into the platform. So, as I mentioned earlier, Roku is where we started in 2016-17, when what has happened is there's 2 frictions. One is the consumer doesn't know what to find, doesn't know where content exists, and is having difficulty conceiving of what they want to watch and where it lives. Where is Midnight in Paris? But then the business conflict, which is there is huge friction between the app and the platform to get their data into the search engine. Number one, the search engines are not visible to anyone. So if you ask me how many hundreds of millions of search happen on any platform today, it's not known. If you ask me what are the top search terms, how does criteria, all of the search engines inside Roku, Amazon, Google, Apple are opaque. Some of them are obviously sending results to their own properties. And how you optimize your data and how you onboard a content library to optimize it to get discovered is unknown. In many cases, in case of Roku, if you improve your data in your app, let's say you do better synopsis and you find the true box art that's actually was used on that title, and you've got all the great keywords. Well, Roku actually throws away any data that doesn't relate to the TMS ID that they're using at the bottom. So all of your extra effort to improve the data, and this has resulted in 90% of the apps, and this is primarily middle and smaller size, are not included in search. They're not getting their data up there. So Criterion, they're a partner of ours, and we've onboarded the Criterion library to Roku, but it's not on Apple TV. It's not on Fire TV. It's not on Google TV, and it's not on Vizio. Well, why is that? Well, Criterion is actually an independent and small app, and some of the platforms are require permission, and Amazon requires that you're on their list, their confidential partner list. Google has 50 apps in search right now. Apple has about 120. So the small and medium-sized apps where search is the most important thing for them to do. And so what I wanted to do today is share a few slides about the actual data of what happens when we overcome the friction. We come in and we work with an app and we get their data into Roku first, and then we work with other platforms. Search is hugely powerful. This is part of the data that's missing, is that it's possibly the #1 thing that a streaming video app can do to improve their business that they're not doing today.
Right.
It's literally a tool.
And before you do that, I just want to remind the audience, look, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A window. I've got half an eye on it. I think Eric does as well. We'll answer your questions as we go, and we'll have a Q&A period at the end too. Yeah, so please don't hesitate to ask us questions. Anyway, Steve, I interrupted you.
No, that's all right. Yeah, Fred Hansman, ask me a question and I'll see if I can't answer it. So this is, let's just go back. What are we talking about, universal search? I like to call it OTT search, or streaming video cross-app search. That's really what we're doing, okay? It's really allowing people to look for a director or a title. So it also implies that somebody kind of knows what they're looking for. You can use search to just say, documentaries on Afghanistan, and you'll see what's coming up. But that means you really don't know what you want. Search is really good when you say, I want to watch the Tim Conway show, and you find it on Shout Factory, you install the app and you watch the Tim Conway show and you stick around. And we're going to show, the Shout Factory is working with us right now on a test at Roku, that the data that just came out this week is really tremendous to show the impact of being in search on Roku, what is going on. So let me just step back and just say, here's where the platform level search is of the top 6 platforms. So Roku is wide open. So you don't need permission if you're a streaming video app. You just go, there's a process. It's convoluted. You have to learn a language and you have to write your code and your library in a certain language so the algorithms can find you. But that means there's more than 500 streaming apps in Roku. And that's 5 times the number on Amazon. It's 5 times the number on Apple TV, and Google's only at 50, as I mentioned. Samsung and Vizio are now new entrants in the search space. But what's also important is when you get an app streaming video library, title, release year, genre, duration, box art, cast and crew, director, award-winning, all of that not only goes into Roku. Let's say if you put it into Apple, it goes into Siri, it goes into Apple TV, it goes into iOS as well. So you're talking about 300 million Siri-enabled devices for Apple TV, where people are searching now with voice. Google now is got Google Assistant and Google Chrome working. So this is search in a much broader context than necessarily just on an OTT screen. And so this represents still less than 10% of all the apps have gotten their data into these data silos that are locked. Everyone has a different spec. Everyone has a different process. Everyone has a different validation tool. And it's a process that is not required. That's why the majority of apps haven't done it. They got live, and now they're trying to figure out, how do I find an audience? This page here, I'm showing Apple TV. I have the links, and I won't dive into that right now. But for example, I think I have on the next page. Here's Apple's list of when you're searching on Siri, when you're doing the search on the home screen or on your mobile phone, either text or voice. Those are the services that are on there publicly that have gone through the process. You don't see a Criterion. You don't see a IndieFlix. You don't see, Gravitas. You don't see Reverie or Here TV that are LGBT libraries. You're only seeing major brands. And in terms of the major brands, 100% of them are in search. Okay, it's not even a question. So Paramount Plus, all those guys, Hulu, everybody gets it that they have to be in search. So here's what we're actually doing. Okay, so this, I share this so you know what somebody else would have to do. So you have on one side of my screen here, I'm showing partners that we work with, independent film apps, independent content, smaller apps that are, they're making thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars total a month, but they're not making millions and millions. And they have to navigate different friction-filled processes for Amazon, Roku, Apple TV, and they have to get permission for everyone except for Roku and Vizio. We stand in the middle, and we're taking data in, but what's really interesting, I don't show in here, there's an in-between stage. All of the streaming video apps somewhere have their content stored in some sort of content management system. So if you look at Shout TV there, in between Shout TV and Universal Search and Discovery is the Zype CMS and the Zype API. Okay, that's where the data lives. Gravitas is the JW Player CMS. Reverie is the Brightcove. So for Shout TV, what we have to do is we have to get metadata in 20 different fields and pull it into an engine. And then we have to make a specialty feed that complies to Amazon spec, Roku spec, Apple TV spec. The last Apple project we did took 13 months, 14 months to go live, to going through getting the data approved. So this is not pretty, and it's not a software as a service. So many of the service providers that make and provide the services to apps, what is happening is they can't go through what is really NRE. It's an engineering project that is filled with broken data on the inside, and then it's filled with broken deep links on the other side. And if you know what a deep link is, it's the key to making all this work. When someone clicks on something, they see a title, they see Tim Conway, they see the link, that they click on it. The deep link is what launches the app and opens that episode and basically makes it all work. And it's actually different for every app and every platform. The deep link is different for each service. So right now, we were talking about before, Colin, that Universal Search is actually restricted to, it's mostly SVOD, AVOD, and TVOD today. The fast channels are not, you're not linking into Pluto's fast channel, you're linking into VOD, okay? And we talked about this a little bit. The sports is a terrible area. If you try to search for the Super Bowl on Super Bowl Sunday on Roku, it won't even show up, okay? So these are some of the limitations. The data is difficult to deal with. We don't know what's going on in there, but what I really want to share about is what actually happens when we get an app like Shout Factory into Universal Search. This shows how we worked on the Shout Factory project. So this is how we do it, okay? There's an API that Zype has at the CMS. Shout Factory is a customer of Zype's, and we have a partnership with Zype to assist them and their clients to get their apps in search because they can see tremendous benefits. So we pull in the data automatically during the day multiple times. We pull it in and then we drop it into a normalization engine. We can combine any kinds of data. Oftentimes we'll get an API or a CMS, and then we'll also get a spreadsheet. We'll get links to another database, or we actually pull and we do data enhancement where we will pull better box art, we'll pull better release years. And in this case, actually with Shout Factory, some of the release years were wrong. And so fixing the data is part of the process. So this is what happened with Shout. They came to us and we said, look, we know that this is a tremendous benefit to an app in terms of marketing to users that don't know about Shout. They know about Tim Conway. This is the key. The public consciousness knows about titles and actors, but they may not know the channels anymore. There's 5,000 channels, and Shout Factory TV is probably not a common name in the United States. So they search for Johnny Carson. Okay, so our objective here was to pull this, enhance the data, get the deep links right so that when the title appears in search and it says watch on Shout Factory, that would launch, and then we could actually see and track the improvement in the performance for the Shout app. So we actually went in and did a pilot with them, a case study that started a couple months ago. And the data that we're going to show you is literally brand new. It's from last week, okay? So we looked at how many people clicked on an app from search. we looked at the changes in how many new app installs, how many unique users, how many ad impressions, and what was the increase in ad revenue. So that was what we wanted to do. So we went to Zype and we got access to the API, signed the deal, and this is the result that we saw. And this is coming from data this week. So on Roku, where you don't need permission, it took us about 45 days to get live. We saw basically a 50% increase in daily viewers, a 60% in daily visitors, almost 20 in streaming minutes, and a 500% increase in new app installs. When we started the project, we looked at you have two kinds of app installs. You have gross and you have net. And so in this case, they were pretty much flat when they were starting. In other words, Shout was not growing app installs for every, they would get some new app installs, but they would also get uninstalls. So this number, what we saw, and we're talking about, we're not giving real numbers, exact numbers, but keep in mind, if somebody has 500 app installs and they go up 500%, you're talking about 3,000 app installs. You're talking, literally in a week by comparison. And that means real money, because Shout, the way Shout does it is they have a VOD app, and people are searching for video on demand, but they also have a set of fast channels inside their app that are linear. So if people come for the VOD and they want to watch Tim Conway, they can hang around and click on a fast channel, and they have a little, and they can stay. So the net here is that the ad impressions were up a third, and the revenues are up almost a third. And this data is just in the beginning. I think at the end of the day, these numbers are going to go up even to 50% revenue increases coming from search. And the results were immediate. The searches are actually happening today. They're already happening. And what's happening is we're just wiring up a data library to a search algorithm. They're not connected. So everybody's searching for Tim Conway, never heard about Shout Factory. So this is the conclusion that we have right now with the Shout Factory team is the ROI on this is going to be somewhere around 4 months or 5 months. So that the cost of doing this is quite low, but the friction of getting it on board is quite high.
So Steve, this really emphasizes particularly for smaller providers, I mean, their content, every piece of content, if you enable search like this, becomes like an advertisement for your service. So does it give, I mean, you get this initial big bounce when you first integrate, but does it give a sustained benefit over time as well?
Well, that's what I'm showing. This is a graph from JW Player on the Gravitas independent film app. They sent it to us and they were like, wow, because if you see the left side of the graph, they told us it was something like 80% of the content in the library was not being played. In other words, it was only the top titles. And then after search, the search actually, we've never seen somebody's search go up and then plummet. The general reaction, the general curve here is there's a striking lift. Here's one. I call the left side here.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
The right side, the Himalayas. Okay. So this is again, this is Con TV. I got that misspelled there. This is an app that wasn't being discovered on Roku because nobody had heard of Con TV, but the kind of content that was in the app was known. It's in the public consciousness. And so they had a 7 times increase in streaming minutes on this app. And we're not cherry picking here. We've had one case study that failed, but these kind of results of 5 times, 3 times, I mean, Roku actually allows us to say that the average app will see a 20 to 25% increase in streaming minutes once they get in search. And they can be in search in 60 days if they try hard, okay? We never saw 20%. We're seeing 200% increase in app installs almost on average if the app is somebody that has a library of television, movie, and content and cast and crew that would be known in the public consciousness, right? So you mentioned, you knew the app that we were talking about. We had one that didn't work at all. Nothing happened. And it was a sci-fi app. And it was short form sci-fi and
all original, right? All original
material. So it was unique, very high quality, and people loved this app. But because it hadn't penetrated that somebody knew the title of a 15-minute short or the director of it, the results weren't very good. So if you look across the board of who are the apps, I mean, the Reverie app had 500% increase because they had well-known LGBTQ titles, right? Gravitas, independent film. A lot of them were theatrically released. Con TV, Shout Factory has Johnny Carson show, Tim Conway show, Car 54, Where Are You? So these kind of results, they fly. What's interesting is the dichotomy between this kind of a result and most of the apps I talk to have not onboarded their metadata to Roku, which doesn't require permission. And so I would say search is the most important thing a streaming video app on Roku could do. It should not be a V2. It should be live on launch or live 30 days later, where you can track it and you can actually see the difference. But it's being forgotten is actually what I think, because we've done such a poor job of educating the market. The platforms are not releasing any data. Roku says the number one search term on Roku is free. But when I ask them how many people search for cat videos, because I was talking to Jukin, we're not going to get an answer. That data is so valuable.
Steve, unshare your screen. I want to share my screen and talk about another example to really give people a practical picture here of what this means if you are a service provider. So one of my favorite news services is a service called Curia. They've just launched. They launched at the end of last year. If you want to learn more about them, come to my site and just search on the word Curia, Curia. And of course, one of the most important platforms for them was Roku. Roku is, the most used TV platform in the US today. So anyway, if you go in and look at Curia's app and you look at some of the content this month, they have an interesting movie called Nobody Knows available. So what I did yesterday was I just went to my Roku and I asked it to search on this movie, Nobody Knows. Now, of course, Curia is available on Roku. I have it installed. I have it enabled, and I can watch on this platform that I did this search on. Roku came back with 3 locations that I can watch this movie. So, IFC Films Unlimited, AMC Plus, and I can rent it from Apple TV. Curia is not included. So this really emphasizes that just because you've integrated with the platform doesn't mean you've integrated with the search. That's a separate step, as Steve says. You have to do that separately. But here's the thing for Curia. Anybody searching on this movie, Curia is now invisible. Curia is a better deal at $4.99 a month than either of the services here that are offered. IFC Plus is $5.99 a month, and AMC Plus is $8.99 a month. And in fact, you can get a month of Curia for $4.99, and that's only $1 more than renting from Apple TV. So there's a real practical example of just how important it is for a small service like Curia to integrate with search. That's how you fill your funnel.
That's exactly right, Colin. What we're seeing is there is a way inside Roku that nobody is really using to track every click on search. It's called the Roku source parameter. And the data is available in the Roku developer SDK, and you can track where did they come from, source parameter, right? So we are getting this data where we can see there are 7,000 clicks on an app in a month, or 10,000 coming from either voice search or text search, if the CMS and online video platform provider has enabled that data to be pulled. They have to build the hooks in. So Zype did do that for Shout Factory. And we could see every time someone clicked, and here was 10,000 new clicks saying, hello, here's Shout Factory, 10,000 times a month or 7,000 times a month. And the question becomes, what's the conversion rate? This is marketing. Just like you search, You hold up, here's my app logo, watch on Shout Factory, and then do they install? So we can also test how many people clicked on it and saw, how many had an impression coming from search that wasn't there before. So Curia is missing 10,000 impressions a month to offer the Curia app right now. They're just like Shout was in September before we turned this live. They're searching for known titles and Curia doesn't come up. And like you and I were saying, when you say, hey, Alexa, find Midnight in Paris, it's not in you don't show, you don't exist. You're actually not you're not present at all. You don't exist at all if you're not putting your data into search, okay? So I want to do the key takeaways, and then we can ad lib what we want to do from here of what we learned. Okay, one sec. So this is what we put together for Shout Factory and Zeit. That this is basically, Roku Search is the single most cost-effective tool. It's a marketing tool for new customer acquisition. And it does differ from AVOD to SVOD. So Curia, if Curia got 5,000 clicks, they might only see 500 or 300 app installs because they're saying, please do a trial. But when you have an AVOD app, you'll see 95% of the people will say, install the Shout Factory app and I'll watch Johnny Carson. So AVOD and search, almost discovery to install to stream is nearly a 95% effective. There's no friction and you don't lose anything. You can uninstall the app. Doesn't mean it's less important to SVOD. It may even be more important because every time somebody comes to the SVOD landing page, their conversion rates are just 3% versus the conversion rate on AVOD that might be 95%. So it's all about math, okay? So this is what we've found in terms of looking at the cost per click or the cost per install or the subscriber acquisition cost, which many people don't know. I asked them, how much does it cost you to get a new install and get a new customer? And the smaller apps are like, well, we're not really sure. Well, we can tell for sure that if they're paying us hundreds of dollars a month or $1,000 a month or whatever it is, and they're getting tens of thousands of installs, your app installs can be a dime. They can be 20 cents. We know that if you place an ad on Roku, it's $1. You can pay $1 an app install if you're advertising. Search, in fact, is 5 times less expensive per install. That's where the most cost effective comes from. We haven't got all the data to do this, and we're going to try to do more of that. But basically, the conclusion is you should do Roku Search. And if you're not doing it, you should onboard your data to Roku Search, just period. Do it yourself, do it with your OVP, do it with us, just do it. It's not rocket science. It's basically metadata engineering. It's a lot of code that really doesn't look like much to normal human beings, just to get your data so a search engine can read it. So, and beyond that, every customer we work with, the Univisions of the world, we're going to do every single one of their platforms because they have to be in search. They have no choice. If you're in business, you're in search on every one of the devices where you place your app. And if you haven't done it, then you're not a serious player in the top 500 apps. So bottom line at the end of the day is we think app metadata distribution is a strategy that people have to do. Get it everywhere, get it back to Gracenote, get it back to TiVo, get it over to Real Good and Just Watch and TV Guide and Redbox, because search is happening in all of those places, okay? And if your data is not there, you're not there. That was the conclusion. Shout Factory, we're going to continue this test and we're going to report back more on it with Zeit. And we're really looking forward to testing out Apple TV next. That's where that case study is.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jeb T, he just mentioned that you missed Data House. He says you didn't have Red B listed in the Data House section, but those are certainly the two primary.
I did have Red B, but this slide didn't have it.
Yeah.
Ericsson was, there's a bunch of others, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
That aren't in there. That's right. Red B belongs in there for sure.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned in 2016, Colin, was most people were still using Google to search for content.
I did.
You did. In your article,
Yep.
half the people, I don't know where to find anything. and what's going to happen. And I wanted to share a little bit that, and you also said one of the things that might happen is, what if Google got serious and decided to take over streaming video search? If they wanted, they could, because they have the wherewithal. And they are clearly now with Google TV, the Chrome browser, and Google Assistant. Google is now making an effort. They haven't really announced it. They call universal search Google Media Actions, GMA. It's a media action that you take action against a piece of media. And what I'm showing here is they are now surfacing on your phone, on your Chrome browser, on your PC, your iPhone, your tablet, whatever it is. They're now surfacing app packs. So you'll see Tubi. When you search for The Wrath of God, you'll see Tubi, Google Play, iTunes, Watch On the Chrome browser. And on the right-hand side of my screen, you'll see them searching video in a new way where they're surfacing an app logo, an app name, and a business model. Okay. And the question becomes, because Google is with us on our mobile phones and we're starting to use voice search, is this going to become, and are they going to be able to deep link into everyone and become the dominant player? Is that going to happen in 3, 4, 5 years or not? What do you think?
Well, as I mentioned in that 2016 article, I think it's entirely possible that they will go that direction. I will also say that their search is not complete and it is not unbiased, as we know. Actually, if you might be interesting here, and by the way, Liz Carmel, you've asked a very interesting question. We will get to your question in just a second, so please stick around. Steve, if you can unshare your screen, I'd like to show an example here that I think is actually pretty interesting, that shows that yes, you should integrate with all the platform shares that are currently platform searches that are currently available on each of the different platforms. But be aware that your results on each platform will vary because of that integration, and here's why. So what I did here was I just did a search inside of Google TV, Prime Video, and Roku for the same movie, for Mystic Pizza. And, this is, as you can see from the Roku search on the right, which is probably the most unbiased search that I came across. It's available in a lot of services, free and in paid services. But if you look at the one in the middle, really, the truth is that most people are going to take something that they see on the first screen, and our friends at Prime Video only give us 4 different sources, and Google is very much the same. Google TV only gives me 4 sources for this movie, and I would say Mystic Pizza is also available in that service Curia I mentioned, and it is not mentioned at all. So the bottom line here is, both for users and service providers, platform search is not neutral. It is biased. It is often favoring its own services. I'll give you a great example. Steve and I were talking about these new fast services, and they're only just beginning to be integrated into some of these platform search engines. And yesterday I was searching for Baywatch because I happen to know that there's a Baywatch channel on several different fast services that plays back-to-back Baywatch shows. So I did searches on Roku, Google TV, and on Fire TV. And the results in each case were all completely different. When I searched on Roku, Roku didn't give me a list of options. It just took me directly to the Baywatch channel inside of the Roku channel and just started that channel. Now, if you're a viewer, that might be exactly what you want to have happen. But understand, if that does happen, the advertising you see is being presented to you by Roku, and Roku is the one that is making the money there. And so you don't get an opportunity to use a preferred service, like maybe you prefer to use Pluto TV because you have a profile and you like to browse their guide. Well, you didn't get that opportunity on Roku. If you go to the other extreme, Fire TV when I did the search with Alexa, it didn't show me the show at all. I couldn't find any example. It just showed me the Baywatch movie. And I even went to the trouble of installing Pluto TV on the Fire TV device and logging in, and it still would not show me what was inside of what was in that app. So, it really matters a lot which device you're using personally, what source you get for the content that you want to watch. And for service providers, that means that Steve, when Steve was talking about that great performance you saw on Roku, you should integrate with the other platforms, but your mileage will vary depending on the platform, the improvement that you see. I think that's pretty fair to say, right, Steve?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I have a couple of links right now. Liz was asking about, well, how do I get my content into search? And I just posted the link on the Roku page. That's obviously, that's the process. If you want to go try to do it yourself, it has everything there, or have your partner do it. That's what we do on Roku. Each one of the platforms has their own page. Amazon doesn't call it universal search, by the way. They call it catalog integration. And Amazon has on their homepage, it says it's presently available to select partners. However, in the future, it will be available to others. What that means is if you're an independent or smaller app, you're not on the worldwide managed partners list for Amazon. So since 2016, we would normally do Roku, Amazon, Apple, and Google, okay, when we started. Now we can do Roku. We can't do Apple, we can't do Google, and we can't do Amazon to help an app unless that app is high enough profile to get an approval from Apple TV, from Google TV, and from Fire TV. And so we've gone, we went with Criterion, for example, to Amazon and said, can we onboard the Criterion Independent Film Library? And it was kind of like, well, who's that? And well, we said, it's Criterion. And well, they're not on the managed partners list for now. What's happened is that the process is so friction filled that the platforms are making decisions to restrict who can come on, and it's the land of the giants, okay? So some people might be able to get onto Apple TV right now. For example, if you're delivering to iTunes for TVOD, but if they've only got 120 apps, it's going to be very difficult. We even had to ask how does people even apply to get permission from these big tech platforms? Because they're all servicing their app customers from email alias, Partner Success and, MediaActions.com. And that is also obfuscated. So it's 2022, Roku, you do search, Vizio, you do search, Samsung, you do search, you can do that. But the big tech, the Fire TV, Google TV, and Apple TV, you have to be a top couple hundred, 250, because I think they're making decisions that it's too much work to onboard the data, and our return on investment of app number 1,000 isn't there for them, and they have to do all this work with Paramount, and they have to do all this work with the new Univision, and they have too much going on in data ingestion to be able to service the whole industry.
Yeah, the other thing that you can do, Liz, is make sure that your metadata about the shows and movies that you're providing is accurate, complete, and take the time to start to extend that data if you can. So some searches were allowed to search on mood, for example, and there might be an opportunity there for you to improve your metadata so that it includes mood and popular phrases that appear in those shows and movies. That's also can be included in your metadata. So just to understand that the better your metadata is, the more likely it is that you will be found by the people that you want to watch the content. So I think we've got time for about one more question, Steve. So you want to grab one of those questions?
Yeah, well, no, Rhodes was asking about, this idea, one of our ideas around metadata is, well, you have to have a metadata strategy. Putting together a comprehensive feed, an MRSS feed that has all of your data in it and all of your links, and giving that away to people who will use it. The idea of Gracenote and TiVo and Redbee and Internet Video Archive, for that matter, having your app metadata in Gracenote, if you get it into Gracenote and TiVo and IVA and Redbee, these providers are licensing data to 100 or 200 other companies. So Gracenote has the app metadata that goes to Charter, it goes to Verizon, it goes to the New York Times, it goes to TV Guide. And all of those are other places which are doing some sort of universal search, right? So this is the idea that you have to get your data back into the system. And if you were inside of Gracenote, and this is almost an advertisement for Gracenote, you, by any means, a small app, Jukin, would want to have their pet collective data distributed to 200 MVPDs, ISPs, newspapers, and media outlets. So having a strategy around search inside of OTT ecosystems and everywhere else is something that marketing departments, not engineering departments, should be thinking about. It's fulfilled by the engineers, but discovery is the way you grow an audience, and search and data broadly distributed is the way you achieve that. So you got to think about it and have a plan.
You have indeed. But you know, I think we're just about out of time, Steve. It's been a great session. We're going to hand it back to you, Eric.
Hey, thanks a lot, Colin. Thank you, Steve. I feel like you guys have kind of opened up a can of worms here, and you know, answered some questions, but really kind of sparked a whole bunch of other ones. And we hope to have you back on a webinar sometime soon, and maybe some of our events to continue the conversation. It's really not universal search, and it's kind of a mess, isn't it?
It really is.
You conveyed it.
Well, it's an opportunity. You know, that's actually why we are in business. So where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. And the people that take advantage of getting in search, just look at the results. I mean, it's powerful, and it's not impossible. So you have to go for it. Yep. It's the best tool you got in the toolbox.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And unfortunately, it's not easy. At this point, you would think that it'd be in the platform's best interest to make it easy for partners, for those that have content, to make it available in their platform. So that when
the problem there is, the problem with that, Eric, is as Steve said, we're in silos, and all of the platforms now feel it is a competitive advantage for them to be a world unto themselves. They think they can differentiate through content, through search and features like that. They can differentiate their products and services. And we're not just talking about Roku and Google here. We're talking about Samsung and LG. So, you know, that's the problem. That's the frictionful business environment that we live in for search that's making it so difficult now to move towards a truly universal search.
Well, maybe we're at a point where that's less the case, where there's if it's understood that you can find, if you're looking for a title and you can't find it on Amazon because they've got their own siloed approach to getting data in, but you can find it somewhere else, that's really not in Amazon's best interest, since the content isn't going to show up in a search. And it could be at some point an advantage to everybody if there was a less frictionful way to get at least some metadata that's searchable into all of the platforms.
Well, Eric, Roku is Switzerland. Roku is open. There's no obstacle, and do Roku search first, and it is open, and it is working better there. It makes it more difficult because there's more apps, but I think if they do a better job of search, will that mean they can differentiate themselves versus Google and Amazon?
You guys have made a great point for that.
Yeah, and I'll just add, Roku certainly is, as we saw from the searches that I did, it is doing the best at being relatively neutral, but it is not neutral. And the example I gave with Baywatch is a great example, right? They took me right into the Roku app to watch that. I didn't get a chance to use Pluto TV or Zumo or any of the other services that might have carried that, but they are certainly doing the best job.
That's disappointing, because you'd hope that, you know, the dream is that OTT video levels the playing field for those with independent content, those that have independent channels, to make it available and to try to succeed. And you know, it does to some extent, but increasingly, I guess, it is sort of the dancing at the feet of elephants model. For
each of the platforms think that they are kingmakers. That's the thing, which makes it very difficult for them to cooperate with each other on a thing like search.
All right, well, we need to wrap up, but as I said, thanks so much, gents, for being here with us. Once again, we are looking forward to continuing this conversation. It's not going to go away, I don't think, in the next year, certainly. So thanks again to Colin Dixon from nScreenMedia and Steve Harnsberger from Universal Search and Discovery for sharing that valuable information, ideas, and that invigorating discussion. Thanks to all of you for attending this edition of the OTT.X Wednesday webinar series. As always, the session was recorded and it's going to be available on the OTT.X website at OTT.X.org, along with a whole bunch of other valuable videos and presentations from all of our online events over the last year plus. So you can head out there and pick that up. I'll drop a link in just a minute into the chat. I hope you'll join us on February 9th when Mark Ashbridge of VA Media will deliver a presentation about why YouTube should be a component of your AVOD strategy. Also, we've recently released this year's slate of events and activities. You can check all of that out at OTT.X.org. I do want to remind everybody that our flagship online event, OTT.X Online Live, is taking place next month on February 23rd. It's our first conference of the year, and we have a truly stacked slate of presenters and panelists who are thrilled to present from the comfort of their own homes. We'll also be getting together the following day in person on February 24th when the OTT.X Roundtable discussion sessions will return to Los Angeles. It's a great way to connect with colleagues across the ecosystem and share ideas about the business of over-the-top video. As I mentioned, you can find out more about all of these events at OTT.X.org. I'll drop the link into the chat right now for more information, and you can register for events right now. And that concludes today's webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Eric. See you.
Thanks, Eric. Thank you,
everybody. Talk soon. Bye.